Talofalava, ma lolelei, nisan bulivanaka, kia ora na katoa, warm Pacific greetings to you all. It's a pleasure and an honour to sit with you today and to engage with the Talanoa, with my dear colleague here, Salā Pafitimai, Dr. Whaasaulala Tagoilelagi-Leota. So we're going to go through a few questions today, which I think are really important questions in understanding Pasifika early childhood education in Aotearoa New Zealand, specifically looking at the history and the development over the years of Pasifika ECE in New Zealand. So Dr. Whaasaulala Tagoilelagi, I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the history of Pasifika ECE in New Zealand, specifically some of the early initiatives and one of the early qualifications in Pasifika early childhood education.
Mahalo whaftai, no whiunga e polofisa Matapo, Lepo Jacoba. Thank you for those lovely thoughts to try and remind of the great journey that was paved by our pioneers of Pasifika ECE. Nothing little about it, so I'll try my best to summarize it. The journey really was to bring all Pacific children to be grounded with their cultural knowledge, with their language proficiency, and with their Christian values. The community, it was a community collective aspiration to make sure future children of Pasifika are strong in those three elements. And so it eventually evolved into the philosophy of Pasifika ECE. It's for early childhood centers that's going to nurture children's cultural identities to be successful later on in life. And to do that was to have trainings. Now, each ethnic group of the 7 ethnic groups at the time was Fiji, Tuvalu, Tokelau, Niue, Samoa, Tonga, Cook Island, in case I forget, but there were 7 ethnic groups that started the PIECA, the Pacific Island Early Childhood Council of Aotearoa. And so trainings evolved out of that collective aspiration. And the first training at the time in 1987 was our Pacific Diploma that was established by the New Zealand Childcare Association, which at the time was called Te Tari Punaora. And we had our Pacific trainers there. We even had our Pacific Board Council members there who were Jantau Uma, Tuesulu Brown, and the tutors for our course there was, Catalina Finau from Tonga, and my beloved mother at the time, Iolesina Tagoilelagi. And then later on, then we had the PIECA Diploma, 1988, which was gifted by PIECA, who was written by PIECA under the leadership of Telesia MacDonald. She was not really contracted. She volunteered her time to come and work for free for Pacific ECE. And so she wrote the package. And why do I know all this? It was at our house. We housed her in our place. So that all these work, I'm sure other ethnic groups also contributed into making sure we have a qualification. So PIECA had a partnership, kind of had a marriage with the very different colleges of education, like the one in Auckland, Epsom, Christchurch. With Wellington, it was with Whitireia Polytech. And so the course was gifted through a marriage between the two organizations that they will offer, and PIECA provide the tutors, the lecturers, and get the students in. So, and then from there, we had the peace training evolved out of the Pieka package, and those were to license the centers. For the centers to be licensed, a person had to be qualified. You know, the point system in those days. The Pieka qualification was a 2-year qualification at 110 licensing points. So all people that qualified from there can go and establish centers and get them up to licensing using their qualifications. So it went on, you know, and then it got that diploma later went into a degree at Epsom, at ACE. It was called a specialization, and then it went into a specialization, and then at AUT mushroomed a few qualifications there with Pacific, and then was Pacific primary specialty. So there were lots of qualifications, and also Te Tari Punora, at the time was called Te Rito or Maio, even went along with the journey. You know, they produced also their degree out of their diploma. So there were quite a handful of trainings in the journey.
I really appreciate that, because what we realize is that there's a really rich history of Pacific initiatives led by Pacific for Pacific in the initiation of Pasifika ECE. So we see the sort of shift towards the professionalization of the Pasifika ECE sector. What we see are our Pasifika, quite often mothers, you know, enrolling and becoming qualified early childhood teachers. And remembering at the time too, a lot of our Pasifika services were community based, whether it be playgroups, whether it be in connection with the church. So lots of these initiatives were popping up all over the place, and then understanding the shift towards licensing and the shift towards qualification. So it's really important to note that these initiatives were led by Pacific for Pacific. And I think even today, it's very relevant to the landscape of Pasifika early childhood education. So moving into the next question, I realized that you talked about the shifts from the 80s to the 90s, and a lot was happening because this is also before Te Whāriki, which was published in 1996. So before that, there was a draft of Te Whāriki in 1993. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts about the Pacific contribution to that draft, the very first draft of Te Whāriki?
From, you know, my knowledge around the question not only comes from serving cup of teas for our Pacific ECE pioneers, and also diving into studies with the history of the curriculum development in Aotearoa. So, you know, in 1993, Jacoba, our pioneers were there. They were at the table in the discussion of the Te Whāriki. You know, you have I don't want to mention names in case I forget them. Some have passed on. Mama Matarina from Kuki Airani, typical, you know, Morgan, and then we have Taone Whalemasiva from Niue, we have Suria Elisaya from Tuvalu, we have Our Lady from Tokelau. That's what I don't want to say in case I forget. And then we have our Tongan Te Lucila Jordan, we have Yulisina Tagoilelagi, and plenty more from different, Winnie Tuturangi from Fiji. These were the pioneers. Reverend Sa'afi, Mafi for Tonga, and plenty more like Melenite Manoa. Our people were there. Our guardians of ECE were there, and they were at the table discussing the Te Whāriki in 1993, wanting a presence of our culture in the curriculum, because the question was, is there any culture in our Te Whāriki ECE? Yes, Māori led the presence of culture in Te Whāriki. And then for some reason in 1996, The draft came out. We were about 3 pages long. You can check 3 pages long. And then when the final version of Te Whāriki was released, we became a paragraph. We were a paragraph. Pacific was represented in a paragraph, and a lot of people were not happy with that turnout of, our people were there, but for some reason it did not culture. It felt a bit diluted. Our presence was diluted in that 1996 version of Te Whāriki.
And we understand too that, over the years, Te Whāriki itself has been adapted in many ways to suit the specific philosophies of our Pasifika ECE. But I just want to bring it back to, when you're talking about those 3 pages, there would have been core concepts that our Pacific people, our Pacific pioneers valued back then. And when we think about that, because I think we need to understand our past so we can move into the future, what are some of the core principles, if you like, or values that you think back in those days, if we're looking back to the 80s, 90s, and even all the way up now, 2022, when we think about that, what are the core things you think haven't changed for our Pacific people in terms of valuing Pasifika ECE?
Jacoba, our cultural values are so embedded. It's so, the Samoan word is umana to tō whatu. It's been embedded to the depth, in the depth of our hearts, that it is the norm to live it. And each of our Pacific cultures have different values. But 3 things that make them common is alofa. I remember Tonga back in the day with Dr. Anakoloto saying, Salā, we're going to translate Te Whāriki into the Tongan language, to the Lea Whakatonga. And I said, wow, so what are you going to do differently? And she said, we're going to add another principle. What principle is that? We're going to add alofa. And that's right across all our cultures. Even whakaapa-apa, whaaloalo for Samoa, the respect. So if we immerse children, if we make them swim in the sea of love, respect and service, tautua, humility, I know for sure Tonga has 5 values. Samoa stick to the 3 angatau sili or cultural values. But they all intertwine. It makes our living comfortable in Aotearoa.
I really appreciate that, because those are core values that over the years carry us as people forward into the future. And I also think about the importance of Pasifika ECE philosophy that's grounded in culture, in language and identity, and spirituality. And those are just some little reflections that we're going to leave with you today. And we hope you enjoyed this little video, venturing back into the past, understanding the past so we can move forward into the future. We wish you all the best in your teaching journey. Pafitimai lava.
Tai lava.